Genius twins, fearing their distant CEO father is dying, run away to find the mother they've never met, unaware she is a struggling artist living in the same city. "He's getting worse," the little boy whispered, his hand trembling. The pounding rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Blackwood mansion, a relentless assault that mirrored the frantic thudding in 5-year-old Leo's chest. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the vast, sterile playroom for a split second, revealing polished marble floors and toys arranged with the precision of a museum exhibit before darkness swallowed it whole. He was terrified. His twin sister, Lily, sat beside him on the cold window seat, her small face pale and set with a resolve that was far too old for her years. She clutched a worn, leather-bound book to her chest, her knuckles white and fragile. The silence between them deepened, heavy and suffocating. "I heard him on the phone with Grandma Beatrice," Lily said, her voice a soft hush that barely carried over the storm. "He said the doctors gave him a timeline. He said he was running out of time." Leo's breath hitched, a sharp gasp in the quiet room. They had seen the signs for months. Their father, the formidable CEO Damian Blackwood, had grown thinner, his already distant eyes now hollow and haunted. He rarely ate, and the rare moments they saw him, he moved with a weary gait, the commanding energy that intimidated boardrooms replaced by a brittle exhaustion. The twins, with their unervingly high intellect, had pieced together the fragments of overheard conversations, the hushed phone calls, and the solemn visits from their grandmother. They had reached a simple, terrifying conclusion. Their father was dying, and soon they would be orphans. The thought was an unbearable weight, a physical ache that settled deep in their bones. They had no one else. Their mother was a ghost, a name never spoken, her face absent from the family portraits that lined the ornate hallways. All they had was a single, faded photograph they'd found tucked away in their father's desk. A woman with a smile like sunshine and eyes that shimmered with kindness. Their mother. "We have to find her," Leo stated, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. He looked at the city lights twinkling below, distorted by the rain-streaked glass. "Before it's too late," Lily nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I've been working on the plan." She opened the book, revealing not a children's story, but pages filled with her own neat, blocky printing, bus routes, city maps downloaded from the library computer, and a list of shelters and soup kitchens. She had used her tablet, a gift for her advanced reading skills, to research the city's underbelly, places a person with no money might go. It was a desperate, childish plan, but it was all they had. Their father's wealth was a cage of cold, gleaming gold. It gave them everything but the one thing they craved: warmth, security, a mother's love. They didn't understand that their father's sickness was not of the body, but of the soul. His heart had been shattered 5 years ago, and it had never truly healed. He wasn't dying. He was drowning in a sea of unspoken grief. That night, as the storm raged and the great house echoed with a sterile silence, the two small children made a sacred pact. They would run. They would venture into the vast, unforgiving city to find the woman in the photograph. They would bring her home to save their father, to save themselves. They would not become orphans. They would become a family. He froze. The biting cold of the pre-dawn air was a shock after the mansion's climate-controlled stillness. Leo shivered, pulling his thin jacket tighter as Lily meticulously disabled the secondary alarm panel by the service entrance, her small fingers dancing over the keypad with an eerie competence. They had packed a single backpack with a bottle of water, a bag of gourmet crackers from the pantry, their father's faded photograph, and the small nest egg they'd saved from their allowance, $17.42. The heavy fog swirled around their ankles as they slipped through the wrought iron gates, vanishing into the gray anonymity of the waking city. The world outside their gilded cage was a cacophony of sounds and smells, overwhelming and terrifying. The hiss of bus brakes, the distant wail of a siren, the smell of exhaust and damp pavement. Yet, they pressed on, two small, determined figures against the sprawling urban landscape, their shared purpose a flickering light in the oppressive gloom. By midday, their initial burst of adrenaline had faded, replaced by a weary ache in their legs and a gnawing hunger in their stomachs. The crackers were long gone. The city was bigger, colder, and far less welcoming than it had appeared on Lily's maps. People rushed past them, their faces closed and impatient, a river of strangers oblivious to the two small souls adrift in their current. Desperation began to set in. They were huddled under the awning of a closed bookshop, the intermittent drizzle soaking the cuffs of their trousers, when Lily spotted her. A woman was sitting on a park bench across the street, sketching in a notepad. Even from a distance, there was a gentle stillness about her, a quiet dignity that seemed to push back against the city's harsh energy. She wore a worn, threadbare coat, and her hair was tied back in a simple, messy bun. As Leo watched, she looked up, and for a breathtaking moment, he saw it. It was her. The same soft jawline, the same kind curve of her lips. It was the woman from the photograph. Hope, seismic and sudden, surged through him. "Lily, look," he breathed, his voice cracking. Lily's eyes widened. The resemblance was undeniable. A tremor of disbelief and profound relief washed over her. It had to be her. They crossed the street, their small hands clenched together, their hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against their ribs. The woman didn't notice them until they were standing directly in front of her, two small, rain-dampened children staring up at her with wide, desperate eyes. She looked up from her sketchpad, and her eyes, the color of warm honey, widened in surprise. "Hello there," she said, her voice soft and melodic. "Are you two lost?" Lily, usually the stoic one, felt a sob catch in her throat. She could only nod, unable to speak past the lump of raw emotion. The woman's expression softened with concern. She saw their trembling hands, their pale faces, and the deep, unspoken fear in their eyes. She closed her sketchpad and tucked it into a worn canvas bag. "Well, you're not lost anymore," she said gently. Her name was Alara Vance, and she was an artist who sold sketches to tourists to afford the rent on her tiny, one-room apartment. She had nothing. Yet, seeing these two children, her heart, a thing she had thought long since shattered, cracked open with a fierce, protective instinct. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything. Alara saw the hunger etched onto their gaunt little faces and the weariness that clouded their eyes. A moment of internal hesitation flickered within her. Her own stomach was empty, and the half sandwich and apple in her bag were meant to be her only meal for the day, a carefully rationed bit of sustenance. The thought of giving it away was a sharp pang of practical fear, but it was instantly overwhelmed by a wave of pure, selfless compassion. These children needed it more. The choice wasn't a choice at all. She reached into her bag and pulled out the small, grease-stained paper bag. "I bet you're hungry," she said, her smile sincere and warm, reaching all the way to her glistening eyes. She unwrapped the sandwich and, using the edge of her sketchbook as a makeshift knife, carefully divided it into two perfect halves, pushing the larger one toward Leo. The narration of her own poverty echoed in her mind, a relentless voice of caution, but the sight of their small, grateful faces silenced it completely. They ate with a quiet desperation that broke her heart, their small bites revealing the depth of their hunger. When they were done, she handed them the apple. She watched them share it, their movements synchronized, a silent testament to their deep bond. A profound, almost sacred feeling washed over her as she observed them. An unspoken connection, a pull so strong it felt like a memory, thudded in her chest. She felt as if she had been waiting for them her entire life. After they finished, the drizzle turned into a steady, cold rain. Without a word, Alara opened her old, battered umbrella, its fabric worn and faded, and held it over the three of them. They huddled together on the bench, a small temporary island of warmth against the gray, weeping city. Leo, feeling a sense of safety he hadn't realized he was missing his entire life, leaned his head against her arm. Alara's breath caught. The simple, innocent gesture felt seismic. A forgotten tenderness, a raw and maternal ache, bloomed in her chest. She fought back a sudden, surprising sting of tears. A police car cruised slowly down the street, its presence a stark reminder of the real world. The twins tensed, their brief moment of peace shattered. "We have to go," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Alara's heart clenched. She didn't want to let them go. A frantic, protective instinct screamed at her to keep them, to hide them, to shield them from whatever they were running from. But she knew she couldn't. "Where will you go?" she asked, her voice thick with worry. "We have a plan," Leo said, trying to sound brave. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Will you be here tomorrow?" The question was a fragile thread of hope, and Alara grabbed it. "Yes," she promised, her voice unwavering. "I will be right here." She watched them walk away, two small figures disappearing into the mist, and a feeling of unbearable loss washed over her. She didn't see the sleek, black car that pulled up to the curb a block away, or the man with haunted eyes who burst from the back seat, his face a mask of frantic relief as he swept his children into his arms. Damian Blackwood had found his twins. He bundled them into the car, his relief so overwhelming it came out as a harsh, clipped anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The entire city is looking for you," he snapped, his voice tight with suppressed panic. The twins flinched, curling into themselves. They didn't tell him about the kind lady. They didn't tell him about the sandwich or the umbrella or the promise. They knew he wouldn't understand. As the car sped away, back toward the gleaming cage of their home, they were separated from the one person who had shown them true warmth, the open loop of their brief connection hanging, painfully, in the air. Alara was gone. The aftermath of the twins' escape was a sterile silence that was somehow louder and more oppressive than before. Damian, shaken to his core by the terrifying possibility of losing his children, doubled the security around the mansion. He hired a new team of nannies, stern women with impeccable references who watched Leo and Lily with the vigilance of prison guards. He believed he was protecting them, but he was only reinforcing the bars of their cage. His anger, born of fear, had created a new, deeper chasm between them. The twins retreated into a world of their own, their conversations held in whispers, their shared glances filled with an unspoken longing for the woman in the park. One evening, while searching Leo's room for a missing library book, Damian found it. Tucked beneath a pillow was a piece of paper, a childish drawing rendered in crayon. It depicted two small stick figures holding hands with a much taller one. The tall figure had a halo of sunny yellow hair and was holding a bright blue umbrella over them all. Below it, in Lily's neat printing, was the name. The nice lady. Damian stared at the drawing, a strange feeling stirring in his chest. This was why they ran. Not out of rebellion, but in search of something. Or someone. The thought was a key turning in a rusted lock. His children were profoundly lonely. A wave of guilt, sharp and cold, washed over him. He had given them everything money could buy, but he had failed to give them the one thing they truly needed, a sense of love and security. His grief had made him a ghost in his own home, a hollow father. The drawing became an obsession. Who was this woman who had shown his children such kindness that they had immortalized her on paper? He passed the drawing to his head of security, a discreet and ruthlessly efficient man named Arthur. "Find her," Damian commanded, his voice raw. "I want to know everything about her." The investigation was swift. Within 48 hours, Arthur had a name, Alara Vance. He had a file. A struggling artist, evicted twice in the last year, no family, no connections. He had grainy security footage from a camera across from the park, showing a woman with a worn coat sharing her lunch with his children. Damian watched the footage on a massive screen in his office, the silent film playing out a story of selfless generosity. He saw her divide her meager sandwich. He saw her shield them with her flimsy umbrella. He saw the gentle look on her face, the way his son leaned against her without hesitation. A feeling he couldn't name, a mixture of awe and a deep, resonant gratitude, settled in his chest. This woman, who had nothing, had given his children more in a few minutes than he had in years. He began to watch her from a distance. He had Arthur trail her, providing daily reports. He learned of her struggle, her talent, the quiet dignity with which she faced her desperate circumstances. He saw her give her last few coins to a homeless man, saw her help an elderly woman carry her groceries. Her life was a series of small, unsolicited acts of kindness. This woman was pure. One afternoon, Arthur's report was particularly grim. Alara was facing another eviction. Her landlord, a cruel and impatient man, had posted a notice on her door. That night, Damien made a call. The next morning, Alara found a crisp envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a cashier's check for 6 months' rent and a short, typed note. From a friend who believes in your art. There was no signature. Alara stared at the check, her hands trembling. It was a miracle, a lifeline. A few days later, a delivery arrived at her apartment. A massive box filled with the finest canvases, paints, and brushes, materials she could only ever dream of affording. The note was the same. From a friend, these anonymous acts of kindness were a golden glow in her bleak world. She didn't know that miles away, in a stately, polished office, a powerful CEO was finding a new purpose. Damien Blackwood, the hidden savior, had reawakened. Protecting this gentle, selfless woman became his quiet mission. It wasn't just about repaying her kindness to his children. It was about protecting a beacon of purity in a cynical, transactional world. He was saving her, but in doing so, he was beginning to save himself. His heart started to thaw. Damien knew he couldn't keep observing from the shadows. The quiet pull he felt toward this woman, this stranger who had captivated his children and stirred something dormant within him, was becoming an undeniable force. He needed to meet her, to hear her voice, to see for himself the kindness his security team had only described in sterile reports. He couldn't simply approach her. The power imbalance was too vast. It had to feel like chance, like fate. He learned from Arthur's reports that Alara spent every Friday afternoon at the city's Contemporary Art Museum, sketching the masters, her one small, free indulgence. He arranged for a private wing of the museum to be closed for a special event, a wing he knew she frequented. He waited there, standing before a large, abstract painting, a canvas of chaotic blues and deep, sorrowful purples that echoed the state of his own soul. He heard the soft click of her worn boots on the polished marble floor before he saw her. She stopped, looking confused by the velvet ropes cordoning off the area. A museum guard, pre-instructed by Damien, approached her. "I'm sorry, miss. This wing is closed for a private viewing." Alara's face fell with a quiet disappointment that tugged at Damien's chest. "Oh, I understand." As she turned to leave, Damien stepped forward. "It's all right," he said, his voice smoother than he intended. "She can stay. I don't mind the company." The guard nodded and retreated. Alara turned back, a look of surprise on her face. For the first time, they were face to face. She was even more striking in person, a fragile beauty to her worn features, her honey-colored eyes holding a depth of emotion that he found himself wanting to explore. A flicker of recognition, faint and elusive like a half-remembered dream, passed between them. It vanished as quickly as it came. 5 years of hardship had changed them both. His hair was shorter, threaded with gray at the temples. His face was harder, carved by grief. Her vibrant glow had been softened by weariness. They were strangers. "Thank you," she said, her voice a soft hush in the cavernous gallery. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not," he replied. They stood in a comfortable silence for a long moment, both looking at the painting. "It's sad, isn't it?" she finally murmured, more to herself than to him. "All that chaos. It feels like a memory of a storm." Damien was taken aback by her perception. "That's exactly what it feels like," he agreed. And so they began to talk. They moved from painting to painting, their conversation flowing with an ease that felt both new and ancient. He didn't tell her he was a billionaire CEO. He was just Damien. She didn't tell him she was on the brink of poverty. She was just Alara, an artist. In the quiet, safe, dimly lit space of the museum, they began to share pieces of their shattered hearts. He gestured to a sculpture of a fractured family. "I lost my wife," he said, the words tasting like rust in his mouth. He'd never spoken of it to a stranger. She left. 5 years ago. She left me and our children. He couldn't bring himself to say newborns. The pain was still too raw. Elara listened with her head tilted, her gaze unwavering and steady. She didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward condolences. She simply listened, her presence a warm, comforting blanket. She made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in years. Then it was her turn. She looked at a portrait of a woman whose eyes were filled with a profound sorrow. "I lost someone too," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "The love of my life. There was a misunderstanding. Terrible one. I was forced to leave. I've been alone ever since." She didn't share the details. The cruel words of his mother. The lie that he wanted her gone. The crushing belief that she had been thrown away. Damien listened, his own heart aching with a strange empathy. They were two sides of the same tragic coin, bonded by a shared, unspoken grief. He saw the shimmer of unshed tears in her eyes and felt an overwhelming urge to protect her, to fix the broken pieces of her past. As the museum prepared to close, they found themselves standing by the entrance. The amber hue of the setting sun streamed through the glass doors. "I should go," she said softly, though neither of them moved. "Thank you for this. Can I see you again?" Damien asked, the question more vulnerable than he had intended. "I'd like that," she whispered, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time. He watched her walk away, a profound sense of connection settling over him. He felt as if he had just found a missing piece of his soul. He was falling for her, this gentle artist, this kind stranger. The dramatic irony was a heavy weight. He didn't yet know he was falling for the same woman he had lost 5 years ago. He was falling in love with his wife all over again. Total silence. The connection between Damien and Elara deepened over the following weeks. They met for coffee at quaint, hidden cafes, for walks through the park where she had first met his children, and for more visits to the quiet solitude of the art museum. With every conversation, Damien found the ice around his heart melting further, replaced by a warmth he had thought was lost to him forever. He was careful to maintain his disguise, presenting himself as a moderately successful investment consultant. A life plausible enough to explain his crisp suits but mundane enough not to intimidate her. He saw the way her talent was blossoming now that the crushing weight of financial desperation had been lifted by his anonymous interventions. Her new paintings were vibrant, filled with a hope that had been absent before. He felt a fierce pride in her work, a joy in her quiet happiness. He knew it was time. He had to bridge the two separate worlds he was living in. He decided to invite her to the annual Blackwood Foundation Charity Gala, the pinnacle of the city's social calendar. It was a risk. His life of immense wealth and power would be on full display. More dangerously, his mother, Beatrice, would be there. But he needed to see Elara in his world, to see if the fragile, beautiful thing growing between them could survive in the rarefied air of his reality. When he asked her, Elara hesitated. A gala. It was a world away from her small apartment and worn clothes. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," she said, her voice laced with insecurity. "Don't worry about that," Damien said smoothly. The next afternoon, a courier delivered a stately, ornate box to her apartment. Inside was a breathtaking gown of deep sapphire silk that shimmered like a midnight sky, along with delicate silver heels and a simple diamond necklace. The note read, "Wear this. For me." She felt a tremor of apprehension. This was a gesture of immense wealth. But the pull toward Damien was too strong to resist. She wanted this night with him. When she arrived at the gleaming, polished marble entrance of the city's grandest hotel, she felt like an imposter. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of powerful people. Then she saw Damien. He was standing at the top of the grand staircase, looking impossibly handsome in an impeccable tuxedo. The commanding aura he usually kept hidden was on full display. When he saw her, his breath caught. She was radiant, a jewel in the glittering crowd. He descended the stairs and took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "You are breathtaking," he murmured, his voice a low, intimate rumble. For the first 2 hours, it was a fairy tale. He guided her through the cavernous ballroom, introducing her to business associates with a simple, proud, "This is Alara." She was graceful and charming, holding her own with a quiet dignity that outshone the gaudy displays of wealth around her. Then, Beatrice Blackwood approached them. Damien's mother was a stately, cold woman, her face a mask of polite disdain, her eyes like chips of ice. She surveyed Alara from head to toe, her gaze lingering on the diamond necklace. Damien felt a surge of protectiveness and tightened his grip on Alara's hand. "Damien, you haven't introduced me to your guest," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with condescension. Before Damien could speak, Beatrice's eyes widened with a dawning, venomous recognition. The years had changed Alara, but not enough. "You," Beatrice hissed, the word a poison dart. "I know you." Alara froze, the color draining from her face. The polite mask on Beatrice's face dropped, replaced by sheer, unadulterated cruelty. She raised her voice, ensuring the surrounding guests could hear. "This is the little tramp my son foolishly picked up from nothing 5 years ago. The gold digger who tried to trap him and then vanished when she realized she couldn't get her hands on the family fortune." The crowd fell silent. A circle of curious, judgmental eyes formed around them. Alara stood, paralyzed, her fairy tale evening splintering into a public nightmare. She abandoned her own children. Beatrice spat, her voice rising to a crescendo of righteous fury. "Showed up here tonight, dripping in jewels, trying to sink her claws into him again. You do not belong here." Alara's world tilted on its axis. Children, plural? She had been told her baby had not survived the birth. The lie she had been fed, the foundation of her 5 years of grief, crumbled in an instant. She looked at Damien, her eyes wide with a million unspoken questions, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. She was overwhelmed. She was trapped. She gasped. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket of shock and judgment. Every eye was on Alara, who stood trembling, stripped bare by Beatrice's vicious words. Her face was pale, her body rigid with the seismic shock of the revelation. "Children." The word echoed in the cavernous space of her mind, a tolling bell of unbearable loss and profound confusion. She looked utterly alone, a fragile ship being dashed against the rocks of public humiliation. She remained dignified, her chin held high, but Damien could feel the frantic, terrified tremor in the hand he held. A single tear escaped and traced a glistening path down her cheek. That single tear was the catalyst. A cold, commanding calm settled over Damien. The years of grief, the confusion, the gnawing emptiness. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, clarifying snap. He saw his mother's triumphant, cruel expression, and he finally understood the depth of her deception. He saw Alara's shattered, bewildered face, and he knew, with a certainty that resonated in the very marrow of his bones, that this woman was innocent. She hadn't abandoned them. She had been stolen from them. He stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Alara, a protective shield. His entrance was not loud or aggressive, but the shift in his posture, the hardening of his jaw, the sudden, icy fire in his eyes, commanded the attention of everyone in the room. A palpable wave of power emanated from him, silencing the whispers before they could even begin. He turned his gaze not to the crowd, but to his mother. "That is enough," he said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence with the sharp, clean edge of polished steel. It was the voice he used to command boardrooms, to end careers, to move markets. It was a voice Beatrice had not heard directed at her in 35 years. He then turned his commanding gaze to the audience of stunned socialites and business titans. "For 5 years," he began, his voice resonating with raw, controlled emotion, "I have allowed a lie to fester in my life. I have lived in a world of shadows, believing my wife, the mother of my children, abandoned us." He paused, letting the weight of the word wife hang in the air. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. He turned back to Alara, his eyes softening with a tenderness and a profound apology that was meant only for her. "I was wrong." He then looked back at his mother, and the ice returned to his voice. "My wife did not leave. She was driven away. She was lied to. She was told that I wanted her gone, and she was told that our child did not survive. A lie designed to break her, to remove her, to satisfy a cruel, elitist prejudice." He didn't need to name the perpetrator. Every eye in the room darted toward Beatrice, whose face had gone from triumphant to ashen. The power dynamic had not just reversed, it had been utterly annihilated. "This woman," Damien declared, his voice ringing with unwavering conviction as he took Alara's other hand, "is Alara Vance Blackwood, my wife, and the mother of my 5-year-old twins, Leo and Lily." He pulled Alara gently to his side, a public, undeniable act of protection and reclamation. Her only crime was being a brilliant, kind, and selfless woman, one who was deemed unworthy of the Blackwood name by a woman who knows nothing of virtue. He looked out at the sea of faces. "She does not need to sink her claws into my fortune. As my wife, she is entitled to half of it. And as the woman I love, she is entitled to all of it, and my entire heart besides." He brought Alara's hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a sacred public vow. At that moment, as if on cue, Arthur appeared at the edge of the ballroom, holding the hands of 2 small children in matching formal wear. Leo and Lily. Their eyes scanned the crowd, wide with confusion, until they landed on Alara. "The nice lady," Leo cried out, his voice clear in the stunned silence. He broke free from Arthur's grasp and ran toward her. Lily followed a second behind. Alara dropped to her knees, a choked sob escaping her lips as the 2 small bodies crashed into her. Her children, they were real. They were alive. She wrapped her arms around them, burying her face in their hair, breathing in the scent of them, the impossible, miraculous truth of them. They were hers. The family, shattered by lies and cruelty, was finally, publicly, and cathartically reunited. The resolution was complete. 1 year later, the relentless pounding of rain against glass was replaced by the soft, golden glow of late afternoon sun streaming through the windows of a warm, inviting living room. The cavernous, sterile silence of the Blackwood mansion was a distant memory, vanquished by the sound of children's quiet chuckles and the gentle scratch of charcoal on paper. The room was filled with life. Colorful, vibrant paintings, Alara's paintings, adorned the walls. Books were stacked in welcoming piles, and comfortable, plush sofas replaced the ornate, untouchable furniture of the past. They hadn't returned to the mansion. Damien had sold it, shedding the gilded cage along with the grief it housed. They now lived in a stately but warm brownstone on a tree-lined street, a home filled with light and love. Damien sat on the floor, his suit jacket and tie discarded, helping Leo build an impossibly complex structure out of magnetic tiles. The hollow, haunted look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a steady, contented light. He was no longer a ghost in his children's lives. He was their anchor, their playmate, their father in every sense of the word. He smiled as he listened to Alara, who was sitting on a soft rug with Lily, teaching her how to shade a drawing of a flower. Alara was no longer fragile or weary. Motherhood and security had allowed her to bloom. Her art career had exploded, not because of Damien's name, but because the world had finally seen the profound talent that had been there all along. Her paintings, filled with the raw emotion of her journey, now hung in the very galleries where she once sought solitary refuge. The twins were transformed. The old, serious weight had lifted from their small shoulders. They were still brilliant, but now their genius was channeled into creativity and play, not survival. They were happy, secure in the unwavering love of both their parents. Later that evening, after the children were tucked into bed, their dreams safe and sound, Damien and Alara stood on the small balcony overlooking their garden. The air was soft and fragrant with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you remember that first day we properly met?" he asked, his voice a low murmur against her ear. "In the museum? How could I forget?" she whispered, leaning back against the solid warmth of his chest. I felt like I knew you. My soul knew you, even when my mind didn't. Mine too, he confessed. I think I've been looking for you my whole life, Elara. Even when I thought I'd lost you, some part of me was still looking. She turned in his arms, her honey-colored eyes shimmering in the twilight. We found each other, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Our children found us. He lowered his head and kissed her. A tender, sacred kiss filled with the unspoken gratitude of a second chance. It was a kiss that healed the scars of the past and promised a future built not on wealth or status, but on a profound, resilient, and undeniable love. Their happily ever after was not a fairy tale ending, but a conscious, daily choice. It was in the shared breakfasts and the bedtime stories, in the gentle touches and the easy laughter that now filled their home. They had faced the deepest despair and had found their way back to each other, guided by the innocent hope of their children and the enduring power of a love that refused to be extinguished. Their family was whole. They were home. The journey of Damien, Elara, and their two brilliant children is a testament to the enduring power of hope and the unbreakable bonds of family. It teaches us that even in the face of the most profound hardship and cruelest deceptions, the purity of a selfless heart can act as a beacon, guiding lost souls back to one another. A simple act of kindness, a shared sandwich, a protective umbrella, was the catalyst that unraveled years of lies and healed a family that had been shattered by bitterness and grief. This story reminds us that true wealth is not found in polished marble mansions or crisp banknotes, but in the sacred, tender connection between hearts that beat as one. It is a fable of redemption, proving that even a heart frozen by sorrow can be thawed by love, and that a family, once broken, can be made whole and stronger in the mended places. If this story touched your heart and reaffirmed your faith in the miraculous power of love and kindness, we hope you'll carry its message with you. In a world that often feels cold and transactional, remember the quiet dignity of Elara, the unwavering hope of Leo and Lily, and the profound transformation of Damien. Let their story be a reminder that the smallest gesture of compassion can have a seismic impact, creating ripples of goodness that can change lives in ways we can never predict. For more soul-stirring tales of love conquering all adversity and heartwarming stories that inspire the human spirit, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a message of hope, and subscribe to Soulful Love Tales. We'll see you in the next one.